1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh, hello.
Serious rock talk back on the dial, traveling at a speed of 33 1/3 RPMs, where the vinyl will bring you to your preferred destination. On with the show, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Clarke Kennedy, and in the booth, glued to my hip like a cell phone, none other than
Dr. Ian Clarke.
the legend himself is back in the studio.
Well, you paid me enough money to come back, so I did.
Well, why do you keep sending me refund checks? That's what
I
I
don't
want
know,
to know.
but I'm sorry.
So today, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, we are back with a different list. Now, we had did a top 50 frontmen, which was a Billboard list, and I'll be honest, we wanted to redo it our way because we found that the Billboard list was a little bit of an epic fail.
Yeah, true.
Bringing in frontmen that have no idea who they were, some of them, why they were even on this bloody list.
I think that's why. It's kind of an elitist collection.
An elitist collection, which I don't know. So Ian and I have created, or curated, may I say,
Better, yeah.
our own top 40. I have mine, he has his. We
True.
might have some duplications, which I'm sure we will, but where we ranked them, no one knows because he doesn't know who I have, and I have no idea who he has. So,
Hang on, before we go, why don't you give your criteria, then I'll give mine.
and then we'll count.
Then we'll get
down.
into it. Okay.
All right, so my criteria is very straightforward. To be a typical front man or front woman, front person, whatever you want to call them, needs to have a solid voice, hit some of those high notes, and raspy voices, in my opinion, are always welcome. Needs to look cool. Image is important, which complements the band. Must have stage presence, showmanship, and being athletic or in good shape is always a bonus. Plays an instrument is a bonus. Longevity or long-running shelf line as a frontman earns you extra bonus points, a la Mick Jagger.
Yeah.
Work the audience and interact with them as it creates a likable element. And then the last criteria for me is versatility in songwriting in any capacity, whether it's solo or in a collaboration. Kind sir?
Okay, well, I only have one criteria, but I think it includes most of yours, and that's why this particular criteria develops. I think in order to appraise what makes a great frontman or woman, you only have to stick to one thing, and that for me is you have to hold an audience's attention. They don't have to be a great singer, I don't think, or particularly good looking. They don't have to play an instrument. What they really need for me is a very, very rare commodity: charisma. Few people have it, and hopefully we'll see how that charisma plays out when I discuss my selection. So I think charisma, it can be built up over good looks, sexiness, husky voice, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what makes charisma. Last time we did this with the old list from Billboard, I had 3 or 4 criteria, and I thought, what am I getting at here? And it all seemed to come down to charisma. So that's where I'm at.
So, in the words of Casey Kasem, on with the survey. Counting down, coming in at number 40.
For number 40.
Number 40, Ian, who do you got?
Number 40, I have Dave Grohl.
Wow.
Yeah, I include Dave Grohl because even though I'm not a huge fan, but what I think particularly, I'll just tell you people why I think they should be on the list, why they're interesting to me anyway. I remember Dave Grohl mainly from Nirvana, the 3-piece band who you might know from the 90s. And he was indistinguishable. No one ever noticed him. This kind of guy in the back banging on a drum. You just didn't pick up on him. Now, part of that, I think, is because, Kurt Cobain was charismatic. And he didn't do great, Keith Moon fills or anything like that. He was just a solid rock and roll a grunge drummer. And then he transmorgifies into this band leader with Foo Fighters. It's just an incredible renaissance for his career. You can just see it. He's got something going, and it's not just because he's with Nirvana. There's something else happening here.
I got in at number 40. I went a little bit in our part of the neck of woods here. Gord Downie from the Tragically Hip.
Okay.
I respect the fact that Gord was very poetic. Gord did know how to work up a stage. I actually liked when Gord was drunk when he performed because I thought he was really entertaining that way. I find that he took a lot of Canadian social issues and put them into positive songs.
Yeah.
I respect the fact that they grew popularity only in Canada and then started slowly creeping into the northern borders.
That's true.
And do I think he was a good performer? Yes. Good songwriter. Even his solo career was pretty good. And he could really work the stage. He did look cool. I find he did look pretty cool.
Yeah, in his prime, he looked kind of cool.
He
You're
had
right.
the hair going, and he
did.
the jeans and the jacket and whatnot. So
He had kind of this conversational style of delivering. A lot of the songs are almost spoken.
So that's why I have a number 40.
My number 39 is Bob Marley. Now, Bob Marley, people don't speak them much today. I think these things go in cycles. I remember when he passed away, he was only I can recall his early 30s. And when I was a boy, I would see his records in what they used to call world music sections of record stores. They had yet to divide it. Anything outside North America, or I should say Canada and the U.S., was world music. And you'd find reggae, you'd find Mexican, you'd find all these Portuguese. And that's where I found him. And Bob Marley, I think of as a minor genius in terms of his ability to write songs. And I bought a few of his albums, and I was always blown away by the guy's ability to write songs. And when he passed away, I was in shock. He was a really, I know he's revered in Jamaica. He was a really interesting cat. So I put in this kind of genius, Bob Marley, at 39.
39, I went with the American version of Gord Downie in Michael Stipe.
Oh, yeah.
I like how they refer to him as the alternative elder statesman of the 21st century run.
Sure.
And Michael Stipe had great stage presence, had a great voice. So with songwriting ability, his music skills, I put Stipe in at number 39. I've always admired him as an artist. I think he's very charismatic. And I think he brought a different type of versatility with R.E.M. where they kind of went a little bit of a alt rock, punk, and then heavy. Like they were able to mix it up.
Well, before I mention the next one of my list, Ladies and Germs, I wanted to reinforce the rule I have with Kennedy that we did not see each other's lists ever before this moment. I have at 38, Michael Stipe. So there's not much for me to add. He's an interesting performer. Charisma's the thing. He never smiled, extremely rare. He was a serious, twitchy little dude. And it made you kind of, your heart went out to him or something, like he was in pain. He's one of these performers or entertainers you get the feeling of, and I've had this a few times with entertainers, they're mildly embarrassed to be in the job they're in. Maybe they'd be better at a set design, or I don't know. He always struck me that way, and that's why he was so serious all the time. He never broke a smile. If he did, print it off, because it's very rare. And he had this charisma, I think, a bit because of that. Like he was in pain, psychologically, if not physically. And then one day he showed up, he entirely shaved his head, and announced that the R.E.M. was over, that they wanted to quit at the top. So, yeah, I put him there at 38.
38. So I'm totally in left field of my 38. I got Brian Johnson from AC/DC.
Okay.
And for me, it's because he replaced someone who passed away. And as a kid, I always knew of AC/DC as Brian Johnson because of the era I grew up in. I respect the fact that he's kept this band going for 40 years. after
yeah.
Bon Scott passed away in 1980. But 43 years if you want to count in 2023, and they're going to be touring again, so I'm so excited. I like his high energy. When he was younger, obviously he had a lot of high energy. Now he's a little bit older, so he had to be careful. He couldn't go in high notes because he could cause himself to becoming deaf. But just the album Back in Black, that album alone, where he had the songwriting collaboration there, it was a masterpiece in my opinion from start to finish.
Who do I have? Number 37, I have Jimi Hendrix. Okay, people like Jimi Hendrix, Jim Morrison, what have you, are really tough to talk about because they're cultural icons. They're cult figures. And so if people say Jimi Hendrix, say, oh yeah, well sure, why not? Well, I don't know. You have to take a look at Hendrix as a band leader, as a kind of frontman, etc. I don't know if he was a great band leader, but according to some people in his band, he wasn't, but maybe they had sour grapes. But there was a lot of charisma Hendrix had, and it wasn't just because of his pyrotechnics on the guitar. There was something about him that made him very watchable. And when I was younger, I was a big Hendrix fan. I studied hundreds of hours of him on stage at Woodstock or Monterey or wherever he was. Jimi Hendrix had this kind of vulnerability to him. And I don't know what it was. It was like you wanted to wrap your arms around him and protect him. And that made him extra kind of attractive, like in a way that you didn't expect. When I was at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland a little while ago, a few years ago, they had a Hendrix exhibit, and they had these gorgeous clothes. He could really dress. But what struck me when I looked at them is how slim he was. He was just a small man, and he got up there with explosions and guitars. And he was such a humble, soft-spoken guy. Check out the Dick Cavett interview. And I think that's part of his appeal is the humility. It's just really touching. There's no bombast. So that's my number 37.
Mine is actually the Bon Scott from AC/DC.
There you go.
So obviously, as people know, most people would know that Bon Scott is actually the second singer of AC/DC. That's right, because Mark Evans was the first, but he had stage fright and he could not perform singing on stage. But before that, Scott was in a band called Fraternity. Pretty good voice. I like his Scottish accent for fronting an Australian band.
Yeah, go for it.
And you know what? He did have the stage presence. I like the fact that he was hitting those high notes. So he's my 37.
Okay, my 36 is a guy named Frankie Valli. And, of course, you know him as Frankie Valli in the Four Seasons, and he sang all those great songs with his falsetto back in the early 1960s. When the Four Seasons started, Frankie Valli was not really the lead singer. Bob Goodio, who wrote most of the music, was an equal. And he just kind of came out of the woodwork, and he developed a great career in the 70s, with releasing the song Grease. And there's something about Frankie Valli. You can't take your eye when he's on the stage. You just look at him. And it's not anything good looks or this or that. There's just some kind of charisma he has. And he is now in his mid 80s rather, and he's still singing. He's in Vegas recently. It's an unlikely name on this list, I know. But if you just apply a little diligence to it and see him on some of the YouTube stuff, especially the early stuff, you're looking at him, and he has got it. That is my 36.
My 36 is a man that people think has loads of trouble, but I tend to disagree. I got Liam Gallagher. Yes, the frontman of the Oasis band, The Twin. Who's angrier, him or Noel? I don't know. I just think Liam looks cool. I think Liam had the voice. I think Liam was the band. He's probably happy that I'm saying that he is the band because it makes him feel good.
Sure.
I never had any issues with Oasis. I've seen Noel Gallagher perform solo. I've never seen them perform together, but at least he is the one that is a rock and roll star. That's what he likes to say. That's his cheeky quote that he declared tonight. I'm a rock and roll star for an opening track of Oasis in 1994, which is their debut album of Definitely Maybe. He was everywhere. Oasis was everywhere from 94 to about 99.
They sure were.
And it's not a bad thing, when people say, oh, you just couldn't get away from it. Nah, that was a good thing.
What's the story, Morning Glory?
Exactly. What's the story, Morning Glory?
Sure.
Wonderwall, Champagne Supernova, Don't Look Back in Anger. These are all hits. And to me, Number 36, I got Liam Gallagher.
Well, at 35, I've got one of the ultimate host heads of all time, Burton Cummings. Burton Cummings is just, is Burton Cummings. He is, you have to take him as he is, but he is the Guess Who for me, Canada's most successful band, and who doesn't know the song American Woman? Great voice, good-looking guy, incredible songwriter with Randy Bachman, and he has this charisma. He does. On his own, he had it. Check out some of those great videos from the late 60s, early 70s with Burton Cummings at number 35.
35, I have the legend himself, Vince Neil from Motley Crue. Focal point of the band with his long blonde hair, screeching vocal style. Not a schooled vocalist, Neil definitely admits that, but he also looked the part back in the day, Los Angeles Bay Area guy. Kind of did the whole a la David Lee Roth look. I think Vince Neil, to me, is a powerhouse metal singer. Can do no wrong, in my opinion. Obviously, I'm biased. I like Motley Crue. I like his songs. I like his style. The guy knew how to work a stage. In his younger days, when he was, a lot better looking and thinner, obviously the women were all over him, right?
Sure.
And he lived up to that metal rock persona. So I put him in at number 35. I had to put him on this list somewhere.
Well, I put 34, someone quite different from the guy you just mentioned, Diana Ross.
Yeah, that's very different.
I'd say it's a 180.
It's a complete 180, yes.
Diana Ross. Okay, when the Supremes, first of all, the Supremes is the most successful, what they used to call girl group in the history of our planet. Diana Ross wasn't the leader. It wasn't Diana Ross and the Supremes. That came later. She was just one of the Supremes. But what happened along the way is people started asking for more Diana Ross. And Barry Gordy, the head of Motown, said, okay. And that's what he did. He split her out of Diana Ross and the Supremes. And then, of course, she went on her own and had a boatload of hits, right? And performed in Lady Sings the Blues. Proved herself to be a good actor because of this strange charisma she had. And there's a famous quote from Wilson Pickett, who toured with the Supremes. And they asked him, didn't you notice her? I mean, she's a beautiful woman. Didn't she stand out? He said, no. She just fit in. No one, I didn't think about her. She toured with Wilson Pickett. Years later, he said, I don't know how she did it. No one does, but she did it. Charisma is a very puzzling thing. I have her at 34.
34, I got none other than the Canadian rock legend, Bryan Adams. And people are like, well, what are you talking about? Well, that's right. Bryan Adams and the band of Bryan Adams is called the Dudes of Leisure. For those of you that don't know that, welcome aboard to the show. That is what his band is known. He's had the same guys since he started, with the exception, I think, where they had changed the drummer once because the guy retired. But Bryan Adams is known for arena rock. He's got the vocals, the raspy voice, the image, the look, the crowd engagement. I've seen him 7 times. I've been to all the concerts that he's done that I was able to go to, and he does not disappoint. He's not afraid to bring on guests. He's not afraid to interact with the crowd, to have him come on stage. He is a true rock icon.
Sure.
34, Bryan Adams. I could have put him higher, but then people are like, oh, come on. So
no, then you probably would have to shut the show down, yeah. 33, I got Rod Stewart. Rod Stewart's been around, yes, forever, since the mid-'60s, when he was with Long John Baldry. Rod Stewart developed into a very kind of charismatic singer-performer. I don't know how he did it, but he really hasn't even changed his hair in 50 years. It's amazing. That kind of rooster coxcomb thing he still sports. But people go to see Rod Stewart. He wrote some great songs like Maggie May, but there's something about him as a performer. He can still sell out stadiums. It is totally bizarre. I think he has the record in some country for selling out stadiums. I kind of get it. His voice is fantastic, but it's the persona, that kind of fun boy persona that he used to throw it in the 70s. A lot of women, a lot of drinking. I don't know. I think he deserves their place. I could have moved him up, but I had him at 33.
33, I got Patrick Stump from Fall Out Boy. Yes, the lead singer of Fall Out Boy. Since Y2K, they came out on the scene with an alt-rock sound. Stump, who leads the band with his distinct voice, his distinct look. He's a bigger guy, but he makes it look cool. He's got the hat. He's got the blonde hair that was coming out of the hat. He's got that high octave voice. He's got a lot of energy. And to me, this man controls the stage. Compliments his band members. He's up there, could sing, he could write, does the music. To me, Patrick Stump, Fall Out Boy, number 33.
Okay, well, 32, I have a fellow named Johnny Rotten. John Lydon. Johnny Rotten, again, one of those cultural figures is hard to talk about. But when the Sex Pistols hit, a big reason they hit, I'm sorry, Malcolm McLaren, but a big reason they hit is because of the persona Johnny Rotten gave the group. This grumbling, snarly persona with his oversized clothes and bad teeth and everything else, and spiked hair. And then following in his wake was Sid Vicious and the other guys. I don't even know Lydon could sing half decently. It's not the point. The point is he was charismatic, and a lot of people tried to be like him in the late 70s. I used to see them walking the streets. He was the role model. They only made one album, essentially, and then off on his own with Public Image Limited. And he is an elder statesman of punk now. But he really made it because of his image and his charisma. That's my feeling. That's my number 32.
My 32, similar. I went with Adam Ad Rock Horowitz from the Beastie Boys. When it comes to the Beasties, the versatility tree does not lack at all. These guys went from punk to metal to rap to alternative to hard rock. Their style will never be duplicated, and sometimes that's okay, as you cannot dethrone the kings. All three of these members played musical instruments, but Ad Rock took majority of the lead, and I loved his nasally rock voice. He would belt those high octaves, he would scream, he would rap. This is what I like. This is what I want to see.
This is rock and roll.
This is rock and roll, baby.
It's supposed to be sloppy.
Exactly, and these guys, they're great. Three boys from Brooklyn. Let's do it.
Well, 31, I have a guy different, but in a way not. I have Alice Cooper. Alice Cooper gets not enough credit for being the founder of many things. A lot of it goth, right? Obviously. He was from the late 60s. Like, they look at him now because he's still around performing. And he's got all the makeup on and stuff, the scare makeup, so you can't really tell how old this guy's dyeing his hair. He's been around forever. Alice Cooper had an excellent band. He had, tellingly, the name of the band was Alice Cooper, not him. But people just kept calling him that, and he said, yeah, okay, I guess I am Alice. That's the way that happened. And he became the front man. He wasn't initially the front man, but people looked at him because he's a singer. Yeah, so you're Alice, are you? That's a weird name. And he became Alice Cooper. So, and that has to do with charisma.
My 31, a little bit different than Alice Cooper, way better looking in my view. Susanna Hoffs from the Bangles.
A little bit better looking.
Much better looking.
Okay.
She was the front woman of the Bangles in the 80s, and let's be honest, Eternal Flame, some nice power, some soft ballads like Eternal Flame, Manic Monday. She had the look, the stage presence. She could play the guitar. She writes her own music. You had nothing but good things because they were quite prominent in the 80s.
Oh, yeah, they really were.
And then, she ended up getting married, had a family, wrote a book or two.
Yeah, it's true.
And I follow her on Instagram, and someone had said, they asked a question, we think about you, where you been? She's like, oh my God, I'm so genuinely touched that people ask what I've been up to. And that's what she said.
I know she married the guy who directed Austin Powers. I know it's weird. But for some reason, I remember that trivia.
But yeah, so Susanna Hoffs, she had great stage presence.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that Manic Monday, because that was written by Prince, who's my number 30. Prince is, again, like John Lennon, or one of these. He's obviously some kind of genius, or was. And he had stage presence, kind of in a scary mode, though, which is the reason why I didn't raise him higher. I'm not really sure about his presence. It's very charismatic, but it's like wild Mercury, to quote Bob Dylan. You never was sure with Prince where it was going to go. Was he going to be condescending to the crowd? Was he going to be preoccupied? Whatever it was, he was not stable that way. And there are a number of Prince concerts that weren't great, apparently, because Prince wouldn't face the audience or, cleaned his nails or whatever the hell he was doing at the time. That's this kind of guy he was, very temperamental. But when he was on, and that's my number 30.
My number 30, I have Lane Staley from Alice in Chains, and also the supergroup project Mad Season. Obviously, one of the biggest in my view, iconic frontman of the 1990s. He had that distinctive grunge voice fronting Alice in Chains. You know, the songs like Rooster and Man the Box. And if you ever heard of the Alice in Chains Unplugged, the best song on that album is the song Wood. Just if you hear his voice, if you hear his enunciations, he had it all. Again, stage presence, the look. Again, could scream the songs if he had to. But again, his mellow voice was probably his best. So I put him at number 30.
My number 29, we're in the 20s now, is Peter Gabriel. Peter Gabriel, an interesting cat, and I think he's one of the reasons that Genesis became so famous in the 70s with his unconventional costumes, unconventional songs. Peter Gabriel is like a genuine eccentric or something. Very bright, a serious dude. And if you see him today, he still has that kind of zany fashion sense. And he's worthy to, he goes off on causes, in my opinion, a bit too much. But he has a lot of integrity, and he's one of the bright ones. One of those guys I sometimes think is a little too smart for the job, almost like a Jim Morrison. But unlike Jim Morrison, he's not self-destructive. He's still around, and he's still touring. And when he's out there, and especially in his famous light bulb suit, you still look at him. There is charisma in that. It's 29 with Peter Gabriel.
29, I got Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden. Now, this guy has been with the band since 81, and not only does he fly Iron Maiden's plane, which is Flight 666, Number of the Beast, he is quite the jumpy frontman. This guy could hit the high notes, he could do backflips, do splits, and he's got a pilot's license, which is kind of cool, which you never really see on certain band members.
Well, I wouldn't want to find his plane. I guess his plane's not 666, is it?
Well, it's called Flight 666.
I think I might take the next flight.
Well, I don't know.
All
I think he has an army background, if I'm not mistaken. It's military. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
But this is probably, I think, where he learned his flying and how to fly planes. So it saves money, I guess.
Well, if you could fly upside down, it'd be 999.
If you do fly
you'd be okay.
Down.
You'd be kind of sitting on the ceiling all the time.
But Flight 666, I've seen Iron Maiden perform twice. Bruce Dickinson, at his age, still has the energy. What do you got at 28?
28, I've got Linda Ronstadt. Linda Ronstadt, what's her name? Olivia
Newton-John?
Newton-John. Okay, there were two women in the 70s that were everywhere, and one was Linda Ronstadt, and the other was Olivia Newton-John. Very different. Olivia Newton-John was kind of show busy. She was in movies. She did quite well that way. Linda Ronstadt was more of a band woman, a band performer. Everybody knows how she started the Eagles off on their career and stuff like that. But to focus on Linda Ronstadt, she wasn't a songwriter. And I always thought that was her weak point because, as some guy once said to her, you can only do so many covers. But she did great covers of Buddy Holly and these guys. But when she was on, a friend of mine saw her in Los Angeles and said, she had everything going, the looks, the voice. So many guys were in love with her back then. She had, in other words, the word is charisma again. She just had it. And she is my number 28.
Mine is Ozzy Osbourne from Black Sabbath. Metal forefather, he inspired countless vocalists, many of whom adamantly are far more technically proficient. Ozzy had the stage presence. Ozzy had probably not a great voice, but it was a voice. The lot of shenanigans and theatrics that were done on the stage, I don't think everyone's ever going to do again. He's developed his own culture.
Yeah, he really has.
And that, to me, when you can develop your own culture, you're up there. And hopefully we get some good news that he'll be touring next year.
Who knows? Number 27, I have someone named Michael Jackson. Well, Michael Jackson, again, is difficult to talk about, but I put him there because I wanted him on the list, and he was, not just because, at 8 years old, he's so ridiculously gifted, jumping around in front of his brothers on the Ed Sullivan Show, but as he matured, became a solo artist. I remember listening to Off the Wall and Thriller, of course, and all these albums. Michael Jackson, when he performed, he did have something going on. It wasn't just the dancing. It wasn't just because he's Michael Jackson. He had a charisma to him, and it came across. I always thought it's like if Diana Ross somehow walked into Michael Jackson's body, like They're very similar people in so many ways. He could have done some really interesting things. I always enjoyed Michael Jackson. He was an exciting performer, and that is charisma, and he is my number 27.
My 27 is the one that you put at 40.
Yeah.
I got Dave Grohl. Multi-musicianist. To me, he could do no wrong, from the drums to the bass to the guitars to the singing. Got a hell of a stage presence. Seen the Foo Fighters perform 3 times now. They don't disappoint. Very happy with the music that they've written. I like the fact that they're still carrying on. I believe that Dave Grohl is eventually going to be higher ranked on this list as his career goes on. But it's not bad for a guy that started off on the kit of Nirvana and worked his way to his own little project, which has now become a successful entity. So I got Dave Grohl at number 27.
At 26, I have Eddie Vedder, or rather Edward Louis Severson III, a singer with a band called Pearl Jam. Yeah, Eddie Vedder's a really good singer, and he has a charisma that just comes off. Solo works too. I know people that just love his solo stuff much more than Pearl Jam, and he just pulls it off. And this combination of just, you know what it is? It's a combination of personality, everything, his looks, everything else. It just comes together. And any guy that can show up dressed like he does, which is really kind of bargain basement clothing, adds to the appeal as if he's not pretentious. It's like a reverse pretension. So I have Eddie Vedder at 26.
26, I got Stephen Page from the Bare Naked Ladies and his other project in the Trans-Canada Highway.
Oh, I sure have heard of them.
Mo Berg is part of that, and Chris Noseworthy from The Odds. I hope I pronounced his name correctly.
I know Mo Berg, yeah.
Yeah, so Steve Page, obviously everyone knows him for BNL and his solo stuff. He's basically the lead singer. He had the voice. He brought the stage presence. He had rhythmic style. Huge songwriting collaboration with Ed Robertson. I think it was just those two that wrote the songs, to be honest. He's not with the band anymore, which is too bad because I really, really enjoyed the Bare Naked Ladies when he was there. Definitely had the crowd engaged, and they have a lot of sing-along songs. So 26, I got Stephen Page. Ian, 25?
25, I got Paul Rogers. Paul Rogers, for me, is the best voice in rock and roll. I mean, it is scary. It's so good. And people know him from the band Free and Bad Company. And he was actually even mentioned by the British Prime Minister Cameron in reference to great singing. We should get Paul Rogers to sing that. When you're mentioned that way by a Prime Minister, it doesn't get better. He's very, very masculine, very muscular, very robust. And his vocals betray that. And when he's on stage, you don't look away. He has that command.
25, I got Ben Kowalowicz. You're like, who? Yeah.
Who?
Lead singer of Billy Talent.
Okay.
Canadian punk band from Streetsville, Ontario, Ian.
Oh, my God.
Came up on the scene very early when they were in high school. Seen them perform twice. He has this high-pitch range voice. He's got a lot of energy, works a crowd. He's a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, but we won't hold that against him because no one's perfect in this world. He likes to brag about that, but whatever. It is what it is. I got more of a depressing issue with my Senators, so leave it be. So at the end of the day, give this guy some credit because the band has been around since 99. They are a quartet, and they've been making albums since pretty well high school. God bless them. 25, Ben Kowalowicz from Billy Talent.
Well, I'm going to do a really interesting entry here with 24, and his name is long, long gone, is Bobby Darin. Bobby Darin came through the 50s, and he made a lot of movies, was nominated for Academy Award. He wrote hits like Splish Splash and adapted Beyond the Sea. He was an interesting cat who could do a lot of stuff. And he would perform in Vegas with a tuxedo, or he'd throw on denim and sing folk songs with just a guitar in Colorado. One of those, did a lot of TV specials. He was an entertainer, and I debated putting him on the list, but in essence, he was a rock and roller. He could sing, he could write, he could play the guitar, he could play the piano, he could play the drums. He unfortunately died quite young. He had terrible heart problems. Bobby Darin was an all-around entertainer, and he had a charisma that comes across. You can see it to this day in his live performances that are on tape. That is my 24.
So I got a similar one to Bobby Darin for my 24. I got Miles Kennedy from Alter Bridge and Miles Kennedy and the Conspirators.
Very similar.
He's a multi-talented singer, songwriter. Everyone knows him as Slash's friend and colleague and partner in crime. After Slash took a little bit of a hiatus of Guns N' Roses, he had Slash's Snake Pit, and Miles Kennedy was part of that. Also, Miles Kennedy and the Conspirators, Slash was part of that. And just so you know that Miles Kennedy himself, Slash got him in to the Guns N' Roses as a guitarist for the backing band, so he got him in there. Very talented young man, has a great voice, songwriting like no other when it comes to alternative. He is strictly alternative music, so I have Miles Kennedy at number 24.
And 23, I'm going to go with Michael Hutchence. Michael Hutchence, when he first came out, I remember this band, In Excess. I thought he was like a Jim Morrison mini-me. He had the same leather pants and the frizzed out hair and everything, and a good-looking guy that danced around in a Errol Flynn dueling shirt. But he was much more than that. Great songwriter, great performer, a lot of charisma. You can see it in the tapes. It was such a tragedy when he left young, but he left some great songs behind. Check out, I think they did Live Aid. Michael Hutchence is at number 23.
23, I got Hayley Williams from Paramore. She is singer of contemporary rock. She's probably one of the strong female singers out today. She's got a malleable voice that's been the bedrock of pop punk greats. She has got the voice, she's got the look, she's got the style and the songwriting ability, and that's my number 23 is Hayley Williams.
Well, I got a thin version. At 22, I've got Iggy Pop, James Osterberg. Iggy Pop has been around since the late 60s. People don't realize it. He's been around forever. Iggy Pop, for me, is like a proto-punk. Iggy and the Stooges were doing what they were doing, what happened rather in the late 70s with punk and the Damned and the Voidoids and all these groups. Iggy was doing it before everyone. He is fearless. He's like a little cricket. He'll just do anything. I saw him live maybe 2 or 3 times, and totally fearless. 3-chord, 4-chord guy, and he's bright. Big buddy of David Bowie in the 80s and 70s. Iggy Pop changed a lot. He changed a lot of modern music. It was okay to be that kind of coarse, to be that forward. And he was a relief. I didn't mind a lot of disco music, but when Iggy really kicked it up with some of his albums in the 70s, I thought, thank God, because he added another dimension to it. And that's my 22 rather.
My 22, I got Janis Joplin from Big Brother and the Holding Company. What much you could say about Janis Joplin? Sad that she was short-lived because her voice was just phenomenal. She had a true rock voice, I found. She is she defines that generation of psychedelic rock with her bluesy delivery. I got Double J, Janis Joplin, number 22.
21, I have Steven Tyler. Steven Tyler, a great singer, interesting looking guy, jumps around with the scarves. He, for me, represents one of the most successful American bands of all time, Aerosmith. And he has obviously some rough times in his life, but he's come through. He has the charisma to do a TV show, to be a panelist, the whole thing. So he's more of an entertainer in many ways now. But that happens as your career matures. Steve Tyler in his prime was very charismatic. He combined a lot of what my buddy said, the original criteria, and I have him at number 21.
21, I went a little bit heavier. I got James Hetfield of Metallica. Since 86, when they broke into the metal scene and basically reshaped that genre to what it is today, with heavy sound, lyrics, and sheer powerhouse with vocal arrangements, which go from loud to deafening. To me, he fits my criteria of stage presence, of the look, because he had that kind of like that tough look when he started with the long hair, and then as he got older, he kind of became a little bit more distinguished James, I want to call him, because he had short hair, he shaved the beard, so still has the voice, still rocks out. James Hetfield, to me, he's up there at 21.
At 20, I have Kurt Cobain. Kurt Cobain, yeah, I'm not really sure. No, Kurt Cobain Yeah, founder, leader of, I would say leader, but he wouldn't, of Nirvana. Kurt Cobain was the obvious frontman of Nirvana. And again, part of his charisma was almost this reluctance to be there. Like, oh no, sudden realization, I've become an entertainer. And he just, I think that's part of his issue. He couldn't handle it. Like, he wouldn't dress up in costumes. The guy's not going to have smoke bombs or spin in his back. That's not who he was. He's a very private, shy individual. And it must have been agony for the guy. He had issues with anxiety and stuff. But I always, I mentioned, Dave Grohl earlier. I was up because when they were on the stage, the three of them, you just looked at Kurt. Not just because he was the lead singer, there was something about him. Like, what are you doing up there? Like, are you a rock and roll star? Because you just don't seem to, fit the glove. I mean, that's my number 20.
My 20 is Michael Hutchence of INXS, and like you said, Ian, he is pretty well a Jim Morrison 2.0. He was the ill-fated frontman of the 80s pop sensation INXS. I call him the Australian Jim Morrison, who somewhat resembled him in style and looks. He had a unique sound and mainly in new wave. So he had showmanship, he had the looks, he had the voice.
And to add to that, if you want to go to our website, ladies and germs, and we've done a lot of shows with the Doors, about the Doors, just go into podcasts and you'll find them. Number 19, Axl Rose. No big fan of Axl Rose, but this is not about me. It's about who I think has charisma, and he's got charisma. When he's up there, you're looking at him, right? Even with slashes beside him. You're just looking at the guy screaming away. Maybe he's wearing a kilt. Maybe that's it. But he has a charisma, so I'm at 19 with Axl Rose.
At 19, I got Eddie Vedder, frontman of Pearl Jam, like Ian had said. You gave a good explanation, so Eddie Vedder from Pearl Jam is number 19 for me, and also he was with Temple of the Dog with Chris Cornell. They did that, so he had a great voice, still does, doesn't disappoint. Number 18?
18 is David Byrne of Talking Heads, co-founder of Talking Heads. This is a strange one because I saw them live, and he does have a charisma, but he's almost like a Pee Wee Herman guy. He seems to be in character, this twitchy, kind of jumpy guy in an oversized suit looking around, befuddled by the modern world. But you can't look away. Now, part of that is, I hate to say it, even though, Tina Weymouth's in the group, no one else has any charisma that I can tell, so you're kind of looking at him. And he is the lead singer. He has a strange way of singing. He wrote some great songs. And the charisma's there. Check out Jonathan Demme's movie of the group called Stop Making Sense. Great movie, great band, and a charismatic guy, and he's my number 18.
My number 18 is James Douglas Morrison, better known as Jim Morrison from The Doors. The mythical frontman transcended the bounds of performance. I just liked his stage presence, his velvety voice, with the song Riders on the Storm.
That is velvety.
He was known as the Lizard King, Ian.
Yeah.
So I got Jim Morrison at number 18 because I know Ian probably has him ranked a little bit higher, so he'll give a better definition of his work than I can because it's his guy.
Right. 17, I have Chrissie Hynde from The Pretenders. Chrissie Hynde is a really interesting performer. Excuse me, she's been around forever, and she is The Pretenders, and she has a strange delivery. It's half singing, half talking, and she wasn't really that. She tried the tough chick persona for a while, and this kind of fell back into who she really is, because she represented the spirit of the group. So she is my number 17?
My 17 is Bono from U2. This guy could do it all, right? He could sing, he could dance, he could perform, he's got showmanship. U2's everywhere. They sell out. As soon as someone announces U2's coming to concert, they're selling out. They sold out Wembley Stadium in 30 seconds, 30 minutes, something crazy like that. Whenever they came out, they did Live Aid. They were there. They did it all. They were friends with your friend Ian, Bob Geldof.
Oh, Bob, yeah.
Yeah, they did that Band Aid also.
I call him Bobby.
Bobby. So I just have look, they're Hall of Fame. Number 18. Number 17. That's what I got.
Well,
Bono.
16, I have James Brown. James Brown, another seminal figure in music. I hesitated putting him on this list because he's not really rock and roll. As somebody once said, James Brown is his own category. He's not really funk. He's not R&B. He is James Brown. But I wanted to include him because he's so influential, and talk about charisma. He's like Mr. Charisma. I'm not going to dwell on it. Everybody knows James Brown. If you don't, look him up and watch some of the YouTube stuff of him just dancing. And he is my 16.
My 16 is probably the most multi-musician, singer, songwriter, and perfectionist, better known as Don Henley of the Eagles. Go figure, he fronted the band from behind the drum kit. That alone speaks volumes. It has been done before by the bands Levon Helm and obviously Phil Collins from Genesis. But to me, Henley could also play the guitar. He's got good stage presence. I saw him recently last year. He still looks pretty cool. Still has all his hair. So to me, Don Henley, Eagles, number 16.
15, my buddy just mentioned Bono Vox. Yeah, I'm not a big U2 fan. The few songs I can endure, but when he's on the stage, people do look. So I'm not going to go on about it. But obviously, there's a charisma there.
They listen for some odd reason.
They listen. It really isn't good looks, or I don't know what it is. He just has. I think it's sincerity. As somebody once said, one of the reasons U2 stayed together I think they've been together 87 years now, is that they're into social conservation stuff. Whatever it is, there's concerns to keep the band together. So he comes in at 15.
15, I went a little bit different. I went with Roger Hodgson of Supertramp. And people are like, why? Why not?
Yeah, really?
You don't like him?
No, I'm saying that. I'm just saying why.
To me, I saw him live as a solo artist, as just Roger Hodgson. Obviously, he's known for the big commercial album Breakfast in America. I believe he's got a lot of the songwriting credentials on that one because he tours with that one. But it's his distinct sound in his voice. In fact, you hear from many hits like Give a Little Bit or It's Raining Again, The Logical Song, Breakfast in America, to name a few. During his tenure with the band, actually, as a lead singer, they sold over 60 million albums worldwide. Again, to me, it's the distinct sound of his voice, and whenever there's certain songs that voice is not there anymore, that just doesn't sound the same. But at the end of the day, to me, Roger Hodgson did do a lot with Supertramp and put them on the map, so he falls on number 15 for me.
Okay, my 14 is Tina Turner. Tina Turner really established the mold, female performers, and you can find it from Cher to Anne Margaret to quite across the entertainment spectrum into singing too, and performing. She had this dynamic energy, this kinetic force. She's a force of nature. When she was singing with her husband, Ike Turner, nobody else in the band, maybe it's strategized, is doing anything. And she comes out with her 4 or 5 dance partners, and they're mesmerizing. There's a famous video of her singing with Beyonce. And although by that time Tina, has some years behind her, she keeps up her end. Very, very charismatic, Tina Turner.
Number 14, I have Chris Cornell, Soundgarden, Audioslave, Temple of the Dog. What hasn't he done? Sheer vocal juice, just going back to decades, definitely has reshaped grunge in my opinion. He had the look. He was a heartthrob status, the machismo. He'd always go on stage shirtless. The girls went nuts. Why not? He had that beautiful voice that he could hit high notes. He could write the songs. He could basically play an instrument, and he had stage presence, and he was able to engage with the audience. So to me, Chris Cornell, number 14, could do no wrong.
Sure thing. I'm with you there. Number 13, David Lee Roth. Well, first of all, if you want to understand David Lee Roth, go into your internet search and look for a guy named Jim Dandy Mangrum, who sang with Black Oak, Arkansas. You'll think for a second he's David Lee Roth's father. They got the white riding breeches, the hairy chest, the brown, the black, the kind of West Coast guy on the beach with the hair blowing back. This David Lee Roth got so much from Jim Dandy, he should be paying him royalties. and he took it somewhere else because he managed to buddy up to an amazing electric guitarist named Eddie Van Halen. Now, David Lee Roth gave that band its character. Eddie didn't have it, and believe me, his brother didn't have it. He gave it their kind of, how could I say, let's rip apart the hotel character. That came from Ross Energy, and famously SNL did a skit on how obnoxious it would be to be trapped in a hotel room with him. Yeah, probably, but on stage, that comes across as like pure kinetic energy. So that's why he comes in at number 13.
13, I got Jared Leto from 30 Seconds to Mars. And people are like, what? The actor? Yeah, but he also has a band called 30 Seconds to Mars. I like his stage presence. I like the way he writes his songs. I like the way he interacts with the audience. Plus, he's got a pretty good voice for a guy that went from acting to singing, which he's got his own band called 30 Seconds to Mars. So I got Jared Leto.
Interesting choice.
At 13. Not Jay Leno. Jared Leto.
Number 12, Grace Slick, a second lead singer with Jefferson Airplane. I know, it was Signe Anderson was the late Signe Anderson. People don't know Grace joined later. She was the fill-in. And she just took off and took them to Woodstock and beyond. There was former model. There was something about Grace Slick. Kind of a rougher woman, that persona she kicked out. But by today's standards, not really. She could work in a flower shop. It was just something about her that when she was on stage, you didn't look away. And check out the Woodstock footage to back that statement up. She's my number 12.
My number 12 is Anthony Kiedis from Red Hot Chili Peppers. Part frontman. Obviously, he'll deny such a title. And part human jumping bean. This guy does it all. This guy could sing. This guy could do acrobats. This guy could, grow a mustache one day, shave it off, cut his hair, grow it long. I just like his voice. I like his stature when he has the stage presence. I think Anthony Kiedis is probably one of your prototypical frontmen that checks all the boxes that I have in my criteria. Sure. So Anthony Kiedis at number 12.
Number 11, I have Debbie Harry from Blondie. Seen them live about 3 times, I guess, across the decades, and so I can give you some first-hand agreement. Debbie Harry, former Playboy playmate, she's just, she has something about her that was very watchable. There's a combination of her voice. She had this attitude. You weren't sure if she's being slightly ironic. She didn't, in the later days, I guess, jump around that much. You couldn't, and she did a lot of the songwriting, but she had this strange magnetism. You couldn't tell, again, if she was in character. Again, the band when put together, was called Blondie. I mean, you naturally assumed something to do with Debbie Harry, but it wasn't. But she emerged as the force behind Blondie. No Debbie Harry, no Blondie. So talk about charisma, and she is my 11.
My number 11, you talked about it, Ian, Kurt Cobain from Nirvana. I think my buddy Ian has given a good explanation of Kurt Cobain. So number 11, Kurt Cobain from Nirvana. Kurt Cobain, number 11.
Well, 10, my pal here went on about Ozzy Osbourne. I won't. I'll just say that if Ozfest, if you got stuff named after you, if somebody instead of the Rolling Stones, they're a way of life. Well, Ozzy Osbourne's kind of a way of life. And I'll just leave it at that. He's my number 10.
My number 10 is Billy Corgan of Smashing Pumpkins. One of the most iconic, coolest bald guys in music.
Oh, he is bald.
Billy Corgan, he could write, he could perform, and he could also aggravate some. But musically, he could do no wrong. So he is a Smashing Pumpkins, even though writing credentials became equal across the board. Everyone knows, Billy, we know. You wrote them all. It's all your songs. But to be cool and to be fair, considering people contribute, he finally buckled down and said, fine, 25%, everybody, 4 people, 25% each, call it a day.
Okay, accept it. I'm going to go with number 9. Number 9, Roger Daltrey of The Who. Roger Daltrey, and again, I've seen The Who a few times. You can't imagine the band without him, and certainly that's a test. I can almost imagine the band without Pete Townsend. In fact, for a while, Daltrey, I guess he had wanted to get out of the house, toured under the title Daltrey Sings Townsend. And a lot of people, this is sold out. Smaller venues, but sold out. He's a charismatic guy, a great voice, looks the part, tough-looking guy. Like you in his youth, you may not want to get in a tangle with him. But Daltrey's a charismatic guy, and he invented a lot of what we associate today with rock singers. Been around forever, still going, does great charity work, charismatic. He is my number 9.
My number 9 is, to me, the total package when it comes to frontman, John Bon Jovi of Bon Jovi. He could sing, he could hit the high notes, he could play a guitar, writes his own songs with the music and the lyrics, and the band is literally named after him. Does he check off all the boxes? Absolutely. Because, Ian, he's cute as a bug. Is that correct?
He sure is, especially with that Keith Partridge hair.
There you go. So, John Bon Jovi, baby, at number 9.
Number 8, Jim Morrison. My buddy mentioned him. Yeah, Jim Morrison, whatever you think of the Doors, I know, a close friend of mine quotes, they're creepy. Yeah, I know. I thought that was a great insight. Yeah, they're creepy. Yeah, I guess so. Jim Morrison invented a lot of what we call, the rock star persona, the slouching around, the leather pants, the beautiful mane of cascading hair. He did a lot of this stuff. He was the first guy, the innumerable girlfriends, very kind of raucous, hedonistic behavior. That's all Jim Morrison. And he almost wrote the book on it. He paid the price, but that was Jim Morrison.
My number 8, my buddy Ian touched on it quite a bit, was Axl Rose from Guns N' Roses. Now, I've seen Axl Rose perform live, and to be honest, he did not disappoint. I'm glad that him and Slash made peace, because no Axl, no Slash, no GNR. I do love his stage presence. I do love his nasally voice. Obviously, age has caught up with him. He does have some good songwriting credentials, and if people who are huge GNR fans like myself listen to the album GNR Lies, he wrote a good chunk of the songs on that one, and the song 1 in a Million, it's a pretty interesting, eye-opening song of how he sees life through his eyes of where he grew up from. So that's the one I have at number 8, is Axl Rose.
Number 7, Kennedy mentioned Janis Joplin. Yeah, obviously she should be on any list of great, charismatic people in rock and roll. I don't know where her charisma comes from. Again, it's this confluence of vectors from the way she looks, the way she dressed, her voice, her choice of material. The best place to start with her is her performance at Monterey Pop in '67. So she comes in at number 7.
Number 7, I got Diamond Dave. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, David Lee Roth, who did 2 stints with Van Halen. Like Ian said, he pretty well put Van Halen on the map, because Eddie was a guitarist and he had some charisma, but you got nothing from Alex, and there was nothing really from Michael Anthony happening, because they were just regular guys. But Diamond Dave put them on the map, and obviously 2 stints is pretty good, because whenever Hagar left, he came back. Or actually, whenever Hagar left, they brought in Sharon. And Diamond Dave, to me, is the typical frontman, the acrobats, the martial arts. He had a good voice, in my opinion, back then. Now, obviously, Father Time has caught up with him. And I always like to say, in my opinion, he is the greatest showmanship of all time. Stage presence alone, and had the way to get the audience engaged. Number 6, Ian?
Number 6 is Bruce Springsteen. Not a big fan of Bruce Springsteen, but again, it's not about me. It's about Bruce Springsteen. And somewhat, I don't know how I got these tickets, but he has this presence about him. He comes out, you're looking at him, and he's got a lot of competition. This is with Clarence Clemens and all the other guys are up on the stage. And other words, there's other things to look at. He always had a big band, but there's something about Springsteen when he comes out. Again, I'm not a huge fan, but the charisma is undeniable. And he's my numero 6.
My number 6 is none other than Steven Pereira, but better known as Steve Perry from Journey. The pure voice behind the band Journey. He was actually the second singer of Journey. People tend to forget that. This man could hit the high notes with authority. Also wrote the songs and performed them along with playing the piano. In my opinion, Journey's success is with Perry. In the early 80s, they pretty well held that torch in rock. So, like Ian would say, it's not about me. It's about Steve Perry at number 6.
And number 5, again, is not about anyone except Robert Plant of the band Led Zeppelin. Yeah, Robert Plant, as my pa would say, checks all the boxes, from the looks to the singing, the songwriting, wrote the lyrics of Stairway to Heaven, wrote a lot of stuff like that. But it's the overall charisma, and it didn't fade. Saw him this summer with Alison Krauss. It's still there, and he's certainly not young, but he can still do it. And it's, again, a combination of vectors.
My number 5, if I don't put him there, people would be like, ugh, what are you doing, Kennedy? I'm like, well, fine. Farouk Bulsara, better known as Freddie Mercury. That's right. The self-assured strut, the 4-octave vocal range, catalog of hits. Basically, he was born to be a frontman, and his theatrical stylings and his music, fashion, stage presence, just life made Queen stand out in a crowded British rock scene in the 70s. Yes, he checks all the boxes from A to Z.
I knew this would happen, ladies and gentlemen, as we got toward the top, because cream floats to the top. I have Freddie Mercury at number 4. I can't really add to that.
My number 4, my good buddy here covered him off at number 9.
Number 9.
Roger Daltrey.
Sure.
Yeah, I had to put him on there number 4 because basically it's nearly 60 years in. He's still going. He still has the voice.
Yeah, he more or less does. He can't go as long, but he can still hit some notes.
He can still hit some notes, and look, let's face it, everyone knows the Who.
My number 3 is a man you might have heard of, Elton John. Seen him a few times. First was the original Yellow Brick Road tour. Elton John has a charisma, the outrageous outfits, everything added to it. He has a presence, and I know he's retired just recently from performing. He had a presence about him. He had a charisma. You wanted to like him, which is important for charisma. You wanted him to succeed, and of course he did. He was number 3.
My number 3, Ian, you touched on him in the high teens. I got Steven Tyler from Aerosmith. But Steven Tyler, 50 years with the same band fronting it. He had the voice. He had the look, the scarves, the Iggy Pop thinness to him.
The lips.
He could go anywhere from low to high, sing ballads, just do it all. So to me, Steven Tyler made it number 3 on my list. And again, like my good buddy says, it's not about me. It's about Steven Tyler.
Well, it's about number 2. I have Mick Jagger. I knew you expected me, ladies and germs, to say that at some point. Mick Jagger is almost, for me, the ultimate front man. He does it all. He does more than check the boxes. He wrote the boxes. Like, he made up in 1962. They didn't know in 62. People like Perry Como and Patti Page were on the charts or whatever. These guys, they discovered how to tour like the Beatles. What was rock and roll supposed to be? What do you do with screaming 14-year-olds at concerts? Like, these guys wrote the book, and so the fact that he's still doing this is almost incredible. In his early 80s, had some health issues, a heart issue. He still keeps going. Mick Jagger, I don't think I really have to elaborate too much on why he's number 2.
My number 2, Ian, mature minds think alike. I also have Mick Jagger.
There you go.
No one moves like Jagger, nor the voice, nor the image, the fashion sense, or the remarkably enduring charisma of a frontman of probably the greatest rock and roll band to ever grace God's green earth. Yeah, he turned 80 on July 26, 2023. Yeah, it's just, they're going to be touring, and I'm so excited.
Oh.
So, who do you have at numero uno?
Number 1, again, I have Perry Como. No, number 1, I have, again, he's been in a few movies and stuff, Elvis Presley. Elvis Presley, for me, is the most charismatic rock performer of all time. Elvis Presley, like the Beatles, kind of like Bob Dylan, changed modern pop culture. So, talk about influence. Everyone looked like Elvis Presley. They're trying to in the mid to late 50s. He had the look. He looked like rock and roll. Bill Haley didn't. Handsome guy, made a boatload of horrible movies, sang a bunch of horrible songs and some great ones. And through it all, he had that charisma. And even though near the end, when he didn't look like Elvis Presley, hadn't had a hit in years really, one of those rare performers, you just go by one name, even though, unlike Madonna, he never changed his last. He never sucked it up into his first one. It was always Elvis. Elvis Presley, for me, is the ultimate rock and roll. And that's why I hold him and number 1 of our rock's top front men and or women.
My number 1, None other than Robert Plant from Led Zeppelin. Always functioned as both frontman and prototype, strutting into the Valhalla of fame by taking the Delta blues and just basically putting it to 60s, 70s UK rock. He had a lot of sex and swagger, as they call it. He had the style, the look, the presence, the hair, the voice. So for me, number one on our top 40 is Robert Plant. Again, he's got the voice, has the look, and has the sound. Ladies and gentlemen, what do you think about that?
That we gave you 80 with some overlap of personal favorites that we think are the greatest of all time. And if you have any input on that, like, send us a few. And I love getting your emails, and we'll talk about them on the air. We'll even interject them in our end of the year show, and we'll take it at that.
Can't get that. Send us who you like. Say, you know what? If we have 20 people email us with different names, then we could create a list and say, hey,
sure,
here we go. SeriousRockTalk@yahoo.com. I'm signing off as Clarke Kennedy.
And I'm signing off as Dr. Ian Clarke. Have a good evening, morning, wherever you are.
Take care.